Congratulations, you've reached 40. A new life awaits. If you're not serious about this, hang up. But if you continue, there's no way back. Leave your message after the beep. Toodles! I've waited my whole life for this moment.
40 is just the beginning.
It's scary, but exciting.
I thought I would have everything figured out by now.
This is the life I wanted, I think.
I am Ademidoyin, and this is 40s Speak.
My life went downward spiral. I got married at 26 and then became widowed at 36. In between 36 and 40 was the most devastating time of my life. My son went, I think God is angry with us and is killing everybody we love.
She passing was also the height of it for me. I felt I needed to go with her. Up to now, I'm still feeling that guilt because I had the money to take her out of the country, but she insisted that she wanted to have the child, the children in Nigeria.
Today, I take you to be my lawfully wedded partner, to love and to hold, in sickness and in health, in many and in penny, till death do us part. When we take our vows, we mean it. But what happens when we're rudely jolted out of our sweet dreams by loss and grief? We feel lost, not wanting to reclaim our lives from the grasp of hurt and deep sorrow. We find ourselves gazing into the shadows of what was. But grief, while a powerful rider, doesn't have to dictate where we go. In today's episode, Ademidoyin, a mother of 2, and Tunde, a father of 4, tell us how they faced the unimaginable, the heart-wrenching loss of their partners. How did they cope with such profound grief? What gave them the strength to keep moving forward? And where did they find their source of inspiration and resilience? It's always just nice to think about life and reflect on the journey that one has made from the birth to now. You guys are in your 40s.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen the fair share of life in this way, that way, everywhere. But let's take it back a bit. What was life like before you clocked 40?
Okay, shortly before I clocked 40, my life went downward spiral. I lost my husband at the age of 36. So I got married at 26 and then became widowed at 36. And I'm like, okay, like, what's this about? So in between 36 and 40 was the most, I don't want to use a negative word, it was the most devastating time of my life. I lost my husband in September of 2016, and then 10 months later, my mom passed. So I'd moved to go and live with my mom in the UK, and then she became ill and dies. And I'm like, okay, God.
Did you feel everyone was just leaving you?
My son went, I think God is angry with us and is killing everybody we love. And that just broke my heart, that this boy doesn't have to say this at this time. But I'm grateful regardless, because in the midst of all of this, I found a different me, which I'd never known. So in my earlier life before then, all I was Leon's wife, and I was Leal and Lakeisha's mom. I had no identity to myself. I knew, yes, I was doing. So it took me on a journey of reinvention and self-rediscovery. I grew up in a polygamous home. I was the only child in between my parents. So it was hard. Life was hard as it is. I had to figure out a lot of things for myself, and I couldn't even find it. So in the space of my husband dying, my mom dying, I needed to sit down with myself and say, who are you? And that took me on a journey of rebirth. I even changed my name. I went from Ademidoyin to Ademidoyin because that meant so much to me. So when people say Doyin, I get irritated. I'm like, what are you calling?
I just called you Doyin.
I know. I'm like, how dare you want to take me?
I'm so sorry.
No, I know it's, in my office, I'm constantly correcting them. I'm like, I'm not doing it.
When did you change it to Ademidoyin?
I
Because we called you Doyin all the years.
I know, and I took it that way that, okay. Even at the time we met, it was still me trying to find myself. You know, I'd done a part of it and I was like, you know what? We're stepping into the unknown. So this is me. I had to leave everything here, moved there, and then back here again. And I'm like, with 2 children, no job, nothing. And I'm like, how am I going to survive? But you know.
It'd be nice to touch on the question of self-discovery. How did you, because almost everyone we've spoken to, especially women, always would touch on the question of the point of self-discovery, coming into their own, having to confront the man in the mirror, in this case, the woman in the mirror. What is entailed in that process?
So it's, for me, it was my first was finding God for myself. So God was everything my parents said, pastor said. God was a lot of things people had said to me, but I needed to know him at this time. I was hurting, I was confused, I was lost. And I'm like, God, who are you? And in knowing who God was, I started to find myself. I know at the time I was attending Hillsong Church in the UK, and like every song they sang that season was for me. I would go to church and I would cry. And it was, I know who you say I am chosen, not forsaken. And I'm like, wow. And God started to prove himself in my life. I knew him as a friend and a father. I lost my dad. So you can imagine everything was just like, okay, now I'm by myself and I have to find me. And it was step by step.
Did you have to go through that process because of the grief that you went through, or because you were just simply clocking 40 and you were also just trying to discover yourself?
I think it was the grief. And then I had 2 children to be responsible for. So I couldn't live in the shadows anymore. I needed to find my identity so they can stand as well. So they don't just get carried away with what the world calls them. You know, in my house, we say affirmations. When my children come and say, oh, someone said I'm ugly, I'm this. I'm like, who are you? Like, if you don't know who you are, then the world is going to define you for you. And then that's where the problem would come. So my daughter goes, I am fabulous. I am beautiful. And I'm like, yes, that is who you have to always remember. So when they say this, you remember, and that's what's going to keep you grounded. So it was that. And then on turning 40 was the pandemic. And I was like, okay, what's this one again?
Oh, 2020.
You know, and I'm like, I've come to this conclusion that I think when God wants to do a new thing, something has to give. My husband was an amazing person. He lived an amazing life. I had an amazing life. I had 0 worries. You know, these days, when people say certain things, I'm like, really? You know, I hear men talk, I'm like, really? So it was almost as if I was living in a bubble. I was shielded from a lot of things. I didn't realize that this world was wicked, was this. People had needs. I didn't understand all of that. So, but the moment I started to have needs, I'm like, okay, where do we go? And then I remember who my father is. And, you know, that just keeps me, that's what has kept me going. People have asked me now, have you ever thought of killing yourself? Have you ever thought? I ran away. Yes, I've thought of running away, and I ran away. I had to run away. I had to run to safety, which was to my mom and my sister, you know. So, and that just gave me a bit of respite. But then again, kill myself? No. I say to myself, there is more. It didn't end with, just being married and having children. There has to be more. God is unveiling the person that He created me to be. I still haven't found it. So I say the whole of our life is a journey.
We'll talk about your journey. Because you need to take us on this journey. But absolutely touching story. And I see you are so strong. That's one thing I admire about you. Coming to know you, I'm just like, the day I was told your story, I said, no way. This woman, she's fire. She's going through all of this. Wow.
When a partner dies, they leave a huge hole that often feels like a bottomless pit. We throw in different things, but it just never gets filled up. Tundi talks about how his grief overshadowed his initial joy of the arrival of his triplet babies, how it took him down a path with quicksand. He found himself drowning in memories. Will he ever embrace a future that does not feature her? When people die at a young age, their partners aren't the only ones who suffer the loss. The children do too. They learn from what they see, hear, and feel. How do we help them process grief even while we're grieving? How long does it take to accept the new life? Tunde helps us understand certain changes he had to make to find a balance in his new reality, choosing not to live in the shadows, but to seek the light.
Tunde, what was life for you before 40?
Before 40, life was okay. Let's say before my 20s was fantastic. You know, after school, I got a job, I got married. Life was.
Oh, what age? At 20? In your 20s?
28.
When you got married?
Wow.
And that's early for a young
Yeah,
man.
I got married at 28 because my wife was my youth lover, my friend.
First love?
That's my first love.
Oh.
And I didn't want to leave her, so I got married. Very young. We had nothing, and we started life. I think 29. At 29, I had my first son, and life was beautiful. We said we want to wait for maybe like 2 years space. Then the next baby wasn't coming up, and it was like, oh, what was happening? And along the line, my mom died. She had breast cancer, and after a long while, she passed on in 2013. And because I was extremely close to my mom, and I was feeling her death because we're close, and my wife was consoling me then. And in 2015, February, I lost my wife.
Wow.
That was the height of it for me.
How many years after your mom?
14 months.
Oh my.
14 months. She died in October. I lost my wife in February of 2015, so like 14 months.
Your means of consolation.
Yeah.
Wow.
As in, I remember that day when I was told that she passed. Honestly, I wanted to die. But the only thing that kept me moving was the kids. Because anytime I remember who's going to take care of the kids, because in her dying bed, she told me that she wants me to take care of the kids. And I looked at if I decide to part, because I was looking at the tag a widower. People now be calling me.
Then?
I was 33. Yeah, 33. Wow. I looked at, well, can I live my life as a widower without my helpmate? Because my wife was like a pillar to me. We lived our life. Our life was just within ourselves. With her in the house with my son, as if probably we were in a fun house, and as the life was just pure just with the family alone. And now she passing was just the height of it for me. I felt I needed to go with her. I was in the hospital for close to like 2 weeks because my blood pressure was high. All my organs were dying at that point in time, and the only thing that just gave me the strength was who's going to take care of these kids. Despite the fact that the kids were, she just had a set of triplets then, and I had to be taking care of the kids. The buying of the diapers for the new kids, the water, because they were still in the hospital then. Who was going to do the bill? So I had to brace up and be strong for them.
Did you blame yourself at any point?
I blamed myself one. And that's up to now. I'm still feeling that guilt because I had the money to take her out of the country, but she insisted that she wanted to have the children in Nigeria. When I remember this scenario, it still hurts me because if I didn't have that capacity to take her out of the country, I would probably say, oh, fine, I couldn't. But I had that capacity because she told me that she wanted to have the kids in Nigeria, that the doctors in Nigeria could handle issues at the birth, Sorry about that. Still, when I remember that, she hurts me.
Absolutely.
And I felt bad because when she passed, I felt bad. Seriously, I felt bad.
Have you forgiven yourself?
On that level, no.
Wow.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I've been like this over the years.
So what has 40 done for you? Because I know we've had conversations.
No.
And when we talk, when you did your 40th, you told me about, man,
beginning to gain control of your own life, that I haven't lived so long in the shadow of your blame, your regrets, and all of that, that I think it's about time I started to take control of my life and do that. Since you clocked 40, or when 40 was approaching, what were some of the critical decisions that you decided to take to make a change in your own life and then not let your past begin to define you? And then you began to craft your own identity for yourself.
Okay, prior to my 40th, when my wife passed, and my mom had already passed already, so, and the triplets who were there, and who would take care of the triplets became a big question for me. I had a lot of advices from families. They told me I should bring them in and bring people in to come and take care of the kids. But I looked at it that I can't do that, that the kids needed to be with a mother figure, and that was my mother-in-law. So immediately my wife passed, like a month or thereabouts, I had to take them to my mother-in-law to take care with nannies, because I had paid nannies with her. So, but because of the love I have for the kids, I was going there on the Fridays, every weekend. So I spent the Fridays to Sunday night with those kids.
Wow, how old are they now?
They are 7 years now.
Oh, so you did that for
I did that for close to 6 years. I was going there every weekend. I didn't have time to do other things. To be, I couldn't educate myself. I didn't develop myself during those periods. So I now looked at, will I continue to live that type of life? And I was getting close to 40. And I said, no, I can't live, because if I continue to live that type of life, I might fall dead. Because the energy I had when I was 30 is quite different from the energy.
Definitely.
So I just made up my mind that things had to change. And immediately, and I knew the only way I could stop all those things, that let the children come to my house. And that's how I initiated that move, and the kids at my place. And then I looked at, I need to start living a good life. My 40s, I started living a good life for my 40s. I said, I had a budget for traveling. I set a budget for my traveling. And I said this year, from last year, that I'll be traveling at least twice a year for vacation. I've set a particular amount for that. And that's what's going to happen going forward, till 50s, 60s.
So it's true. It's true when they say you really begin to live for your own self.
Yeah.
Start to pursue your own life goals when the 40 milestone begins to knock.
I was going to say life begins at 40.
40.
Yeah, because I feel like at that stage, most people have done it and they just see like you can't keep living the way you were living. So you have to get up and keep moving, because really it feels like we've lived half of our life already.
Sure.
So the remaining half would have to be determined by what you start with now. You can imagine you're 40 and you're still not clear on anything. Not like I'm fully clear on everything, because I really have a feeling God doesn't want us to be crystal clear on everything, because then we'll not be able to depend on Him. But yes, life begins at 40. I have had to make very critical decisions towards 40, and I'm like, you know what? I can't be that person that doesn't talk anymore. I can't be that person that just thinks I need to be a wife and a mom. I need to find me and find expression. That's why I came to Voice Over Academy. Everything I think I have inside of me, I've explored. I like to bake. I've tried to do baking business. Anything that just shouts inside my head, I do it. I like to talk. I've done a podcast. Even, I say to myself, even if the world doesn't hear it, I satisfy the craving inside of me. And these days, anything I want to eat,
you eat it.
I'm sure eat it. Because I can't keep going on and saying, oh, this is the way it has to be. So I feel like I'm at that space where I'm living my life not to please anybody, but to ensure that I'm intentional about doing the Father's will.
Great.
And that seems like all that matters.
Wow. Man, I just feel like, Dio, I think I've just been floated. These are really life, changing stories that people need to hear and learn a lot from. And I must say, more strength, more power, more will to you. The show is 40 Speak, and I know that there will be people who would listen and see this and are probably going through a grief. So how's it been like since you clocked 40?
So I would say gratitude has kept me going. So I'm grateful for the things that are working, the things that are not working. I'm just grateful for life because I could have died. So many times I could have died. So it's in every day, I keep a journal of the things I'm grateful for. So I'm grateful for the tiniest things that happen because I've seen life float away. I was right in my husband's room when the monitor started to go down, down, down. And I was one that I beckoned on the nurse and said, I think he's dying.
Change, it's constant. We change jobs, houses, clothing, but we don't see it important to change ourselves. And that's the most important type of change we all need. Ademidoyin and Tunde share with us how they started to find themselves and their identity outside of being married. They shared some of the things that helped them fight the anxiety that comes with being 40 and the sorrow of losing their dearest ones.
Moments before then, I realized I'd been selfish because he was ill for a few months. He was ill from May till September. And I kept on telling God, you just have to heal him. You can't let this happen. And he had told me, I think 2 weeks before he died, that he wants to go home. I'm like, where's home? Home is home. You can't be going anywhere else. He says the father has called him home. I'm like, home care. What's going to happen to myself and my children? I couldn't figure anything out for myself. I remember the first day I had to buy petrol. I remember the first day I had to go to the mechanic. I'm like, what? How am I going to do any of this?
How was it for you?
When you get to 40, your immune system is quite different from when you're 30s or 20s. What I do is that I maintain a 3 months medical checkup. I do a 3 months medical checkup. I check every part of my body to ensure that my system is working very well. Because for me, I look at it that I'm the only person taking care of the kids.
Yeah, as a lone parent, you have to ensure that your life for your children.
Exactly. I have to be playing that dual role, the mother and the father. Kids wanted me to be there. And, I was giving them an excuse because of my work. But I had to realize that I'm getting to that age that I need to be free. In my office, my young junior colleague, they know the way I harass them, in terms of delivering numbers and everything. But I had to just take it cool.
So now you realize that life is not hard now.
Life is not hard. And
coming down.
I discovered that now that I've taken life cool, they will bring out things are working.
Yield more results.
Exactly. They yield
Absolutely.
more. Not that you have to force people to do things and So for me, fantastic.
It's been fun all the way.
It's been fun.
Great.
Fun.
So I want you to please tell me, so what are some of the learnings for you from single parenthood? Some of the critical learnings for you as single parents now that you've tasted one and you have tasted another, or you are still tasting the other. So what has been the lesson for you?
I'm more detailed about my finances, which I didn't have a business with that before. Because now I'm having to pay bills and I'm having to ensure that my children look their best. People see that my children outside and they don't believe they don't have a father. Because I'm like, they're priority, whether I like it or not. Before now, I was that mommy that was behind the scenes. No. I didn't go for any school functions, nothing. Tomorrow I'm going for Mother's Day at my daughter's school. I would never have done that. It was none of my business. It was daddy's business.
Interesting. It was mommy's business for you. It was daddy's business for you.
School, the women that go for the PTA. Recently, I just came back. I traveled. I just came back to the country, and I was trying to get things for them. I had to be looking at what size.
You're struggling.
I was struggling, seriously struggling.
I struggle.
I was struggling seriously to know, what size, what type of top to buy for them. And at the end of the day, I couldn't buy a lot of things because I didn't even know what size, all those things. So it's like a struggling part for me.
Yeah.
But as soon as there's a woman.
It's not a woman thing, but so just my final question. So what do you think other people who are not yet 40 can take away? What must they know? What should they know? What should they be aware of?
I would say find yourself.
Find yourself.
And before you find yourself, find your God.
So the anxiety is real, the anticipation, the fear for 40, the apprehension. Is that something that would happen?
For my personal journey, I wouldn't say that because I had already had things going on. But I think a few of my friends had the apprehension that I'm going to be 40, especially the ones that are not married, and they say, "Tori, I'm not married, nothing is happening, I don't even know what career path." So I think it's a society thing that makes you feel like if you're 40 and you've not gotten your life together, then there's a problem.
Exactly.
I know someone that got divorced just before he was 40, and he just felt like, this is not right. That life is supposed to be starting. And he's jumped into another marriage again, and I'm like,
wow.
So it just feels like you need to check off on a lot of boxes. And I don't think you should be that way. So we need to just take a step back. Yes, reevaluate your life. Very, very critical if you're going to be 40. Look at the things that are working and things that are not working, and where you need to make
focus, your finance,
your health, very, very key, because 40 slows a lot of things down.
Sure.
I'm having to wear glasses. My tongue is getting bigger.
Get a little girl. So then what would it do for you? The lessons for people who are not yet 40 or people who are getting close to 40 as a man.
Yeah, as a man, you need to be close to God. Because when we're less than 40, this life realities, we want to enjoy the life, we have the cash, you want to go to clubs, and you take a lot of alcohol, and also, when you're approaching 40, your systems becomes weaker compared to when your system, we are still like 30s, and also a lot of people don't check their blood pressures, and the next day they fall dead. So at that point in time, as you're getting to 40, you must be conscious of your health, checking your health regularly, then doing a lot of exercises. For me now, when I was like 30, I was 37, 38, I was bigger than this. As I approached 40, I was conscious of my health.
You're speaking to your body.
I was speaking to my body. My diet, I had to watch what I'm taking in.
Yeah.
So you have to be conscious of your health, and do things that will make you happy. A lot of people will tell you different things, trying to control your life. But what suits you is what you do. What will make you happy, And I actually give that example that when my kids were in my in-laws, they were controlling me, in terms of do this, do that. But I had to look at myself. 40, you're in charge. I have to be in charge of my life.
You have to be in charge.
Everything I do, every decision I make, I must know. I'm able to know the consequences of it.
Yeah.
Stand by it.
What has been your staying power?
Redefine myself and knowing what I want in life.
Amazing. I know you had said
gratitude all the way. Gratitude.
Wow. It's so lovely learning from you guys today and understanding the power that grief can cause you.
Sure.
And how we shouldn't then define our own lives' journey and purpose because of things that happen to us. As we clock 40, it's necessary that we define and redefine ourselves, find our identity, connect with the purpose of God for our lives. It's necessary, it's important. Absolutely enjoyed talking to the both of you. You guys are amazing persons. You're my favorite person, Tunde and Doye. Thank you so much. I look forward to much more conversation. Thank you.
In this season of life, finding ourselves means finding God. And in that discovery, we unlock the freedom to live fully. Here's a scripture that speaks loads about this. But this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth unto those things which are before. Philippians 3:13. Along the way, it's important to cultivate gratitude for even the tiniest things. Prioritizing consistent medical checkups, being more detailed with your finances. These are some of the steps that could help you find stability.